we continue to inch closer to Michigan being in the national championship game. Still very, very difficult to believe, despite it being natty or bust. Seems to be very difficult to believe for a lot of coaches out there, as well as a writer from the IndyStar. Let's go ahead and talk about all of that, as well as a little bit more about the matchup on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Thursday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group, and Michigan playing in the national championship on Monday. We are basically a weekend away. At the end of a long weekend, it's not actually a long weekend. We can pretend like it is. It is a holiday after all, National Championship Monday. So we've got flights to Houston tomorrow. The team, myself, a lot of other people, maybe even some of you. You've got the whole weekend. You've got media day on Saturday. You got a practice, got coaches press conference on Sunday, and then we have the game on Monday. There are concerts. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Weirdly, haven't paid as much attention to it this year as some of the other years, but nonetheless, Michigan going to play Washington in the national championship game. And these are two teams that both have chips on their shoulder. They've both been counted out, right? My friend Josh Pate, he picked against Michigan every chance he could get. He picked against Washington every chance he can get. He made penance for it on his show on Sunday, or Monday, I guess it would be Tuesday, actually. Feels like it was a Saturday on Monday, right? So, but he's not alone, right? And these teams have certainly felt that. You know, they have been counted out time and time again. The thing I am most fearful of when it comes to Washington is the fact that they believe just as much as Michigan does. They believe that they're counted out. They believe it's Washington versus everybody. They just don't think it's they're getting a fair shake. They have won it every step of the way. Now, they certainly struggled a bit more than Michigan did in a large swath of the season, but there were struggles. But Michigan's struggle was more of the 35-7 variety, whereas Washington's was barely overcoming, getting 15 points against Arizona State, right? That's Washington's version of struggle. But they nonetheless have way more weapons than what we have normally seen. But Michigan is built to be able to take on Washington, right? Okay, they've got 3 elite receivers and an elite quarterback. They've got a really good running back. But that's how Michigan was built. To defend that. Michigan, starting with the Mike McDonald defensive coordinator experience and transitioning into Jesse Minter, it was built to be able to take on those elite receivers and elite quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, followed by the next year of C.J. Stroud, Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, Cade Stover as the tight end, and obviously still a cadre of other players, Julian Fleming, and this year Carnell Tate, all that. So while Michigan hasn't faced a quarterback as good as Kyle McCord, as C.J. Stroud, still wrong, Michael Penix, they have faced Kyle McCord. A lot of these guys faced C.J. Stroud. They did a good job. It's going to be incumbent upon Michigan to force them into field goal situations instead of allowing long touchdowns. That is the big key for Michigan. Can it get into the defensive backfield and make Michael Penix uncomfortable? Well, it's not really many people have 11 sacks, as we discussed yesterday. So just by the numbers a little bit more, I mean, Roma Dunze is their guy. A lot of people mad that he did not win the Biletnikoff. 87 receptions for 1,553 yards. That's 17.85 yards per catch. 13 touchdowns. Jalen Polk right behind him with 65 receptions. 11-22, 9 touchdowns. Jalen McMillan is the next guy there. 39 receptions, 526. And then Jeremy Bernard is the lower man on the totem pole with 34 catches, 419. So they are very, very good when it comes to that. And keeping in mind, Dylan Johnson, who's had his banged up moments, including at the end of this last game, is a very good running back. He's got averages 5.23 yards a carry. He's got over 1,000 yards 1162 on 222. So this is a team that can, is the best way to put it. This is a team that can. When you think about the receiving for Michigan, no one in the thousands, nowhere anywhere close, but Roman Wilson with 735, Colston Loveland with 585, Cornelius with 579. And then when it comes to rushing, very similar stats, 11-11 for Blake Corum, 237 yards, but with 25 touchdowns, leading the country. So for Michigan, it's not about going tit for tat in this game. It's about slowing them down enough and kind of keeping a similar mentality as we've seen offensively in the last couple of years. Washington is the worst defensive team to perform in the college football playoff. So that says something, right? So when you look at total defense last year, where TCU is, let's see where they were. They were 95th in the country in total defense. So I feel like that's not right. I saw that thing before. So Washington's 97th. So not much different than TCU. Michigan obviously put up 45 points against TCU in that game, but they played TCU's game, right? Because they found themselves down. Can't do that in this game. You have to take advantage of what's there. Don't get cute. All those same caveats that we talked about going into the playoff. Maybe complete some of those things, like the things that have tended to work, the flea flickers and all of that stuff. I think that would be incumbent upon Michigan in this upcoming game. As far as Washington is concerned as well, when it comes to sacks, they don't have a bunch of real big taskmasters there. Braylon Trice is the main guy as an edge rusher, 7 sacks, 3.5 for Zion Tupula Fatui, and 3 for Edufan Olofosio. I'm glad that, I wish that Carl Grappentine was doing this game. Those are your guys that lead in tackles for loss as well. If you can neutralize Braylon Trice off the edge, you've got a good shot. And then Olofosio is a linebacker. As far as tackles for loss, some of these guys, they played in the game against Michigan 2 years ago. 3 was the number there. So Braylon Trice was a freshman then as an outside linebacker and played in that game, as did Olofosio. And so there's a lot to work on. There's a lot to really try to figure out if you're Michigan. You got to win 2 out of 3 phases to win a game, right? Against Alabama, Michigan lost special teams for sure, but won offensively and defensively. So you might not win defensively, but can you win on special teams and can you win offensively? And get enough wins on defense to keep Washington at bay. I'll tell you what, the more I look into this, the better I feel about it. But again, Michigan's got to come to play. This is not Rutgers week, right? This is not even Maryland week. This is, you are going to play the best team that you have faced all season long. That's why they are in the championship game. Now, I talked to a colleague of mine who's a national guy that I would say probably most of you know. And they had said to me that this, in their estimation, is Ohio State, Michigan being Ohio State, weirdly in this analogy, and Oregon in 2014. He's like, this just reeks of big win for Michigan. We'll see. Michigan plays a much different style of ball. Styles make fights. Michigan's style is equipped to beat this type of team. Do I love the matchup? No, but guess what? Michigan is built for this matchup. Washington is not built for this matchup. But that doesn't mean they can't win. So I am starting to feel a lot better about it as we go on. All right, let's talk about the head coaches saying some really weird stuff again to Bruce Feldman. The narrative has clearly been said. I've been listening to SiriusXM as I've been driving around today as well. And so let's kind of get into more of the narrative and some of these things that are being said that are just absolutely bizarre. We're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, I know that right now there's a lot of you that are scouring the internet trying to find out how you can get $5 national championship tickets. Guess what? You're not going to find it, at least unless it's written in crayon and you get denied at the door. But there are so many times that I'm sure that a lot of you were looking for Rose Bowl tickets and felt priced out of it. But now, listen, they're not cheap. These are not cheap. But if you're going to find the cheapest version of you getting in the door in Houston at Energy Stadium, it's by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets for your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you, including the national championship game. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their best price guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I'm gonna have a little bit of fun here, and we're gonna look up exactly what we're how much it costs to get in. But we're gonna do that momentarily, okay? Nonetheless, you can see the view from your seat before you buy. You know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you the complete peace of mind with your purchase. With all-in prices, they show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. And you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. So let's just take a quick look. I did not pull this up in advance. This is just me vamping as usual. But let's see. Let's go Michigan football here. Of course, it's not going to be easy. They're not making it easy on me here. Michigan football. And, all right, this is now showing me everything for next year. That doesn't work. Nonetheless, I'm sure you can do it a lot faster than me trying to vamp. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account at Gametime, redeem the code LOCKEDON, $20 off. That helps, right? Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. For those of you who are, which is the majority of you, who are listening to this with ads, I figured it out, okay? I did a lot better than, I just didn't click on the not events nearby. Gametime, you can get your tickets starting at $873 each. That's not abnormal, right? I know people who spent $2,000 to get in there. If you want to go the other way, we're looking at $5,742. That's not even those are lodge seats. That's why. But you can get 50-yard line-ish tickets for just $55.97 each. If you want to be like about 20 rows up, 50-yard line, pretty good seats, of course. It's a bit. It's a bit to get in there, but that's. I've even found some tickets about 12 rows up here. I'm looking right here. I mean, we're talking section 126. That's like right at the 45, 2 seats together, and it's row P. It's a pretty good deal, to be honest, for the national championship. Right? It's the Super Bowl. It's just the college football version. All right, let's get to the coaches and everything. They're saying a bunch of weird stuff to Bruce Feldman again, right? They watched Michigan beat Alabama, and they're just apparently not that impressed, right? But the Washington people are. So we're going to read a bunch of these quotes. This is a coordinator who faced Washington. This is probably the first time I've ever been fired up for a national championship game. I'm so fascinated with this game because there are 2 polar opposites going against each other. So you've got that. And no coaches, it says, leaned toward Michigan or Washington winning big, but a majority picked Washington to win as an underdog now. 3-0, the number 2 team versus the number 1 team in the national championship game. So that favors Washington. But it says one coach was shocked to learn Michigan was a 4-point favorite, but another assistant said Michigan may be the better team in all aspects. And that coach says, it's hard to go against Michigan, but I just think Washington is more battle-tested, and they find a way to do it one more time. That's a head coach that said that. Doesn't say whether or not that was a head coach that faced Washington or faced Michigan. Nonetheless, Washington more battle-tested. I mean, if you want to say battle-tested is in playing more close games, sure. They played more close games. Washington had a non-conference against Michigan State. All right, sure. Whatever floats your boat as far as that's concerned, right? Boise State, Tulsa, Michigan State was their non-conference. Otherwise, as far as ranked opponents, teams that were ranked when they played them are ranked now, actually, more so. Arizona, who they beat by 7 points. Oregon, twice, is number 8 in the country. Oregon State and Texas. Now, Michigan has obviously played 4 teams that were ranked. 1 is not anymore. Iowa is not ranked anymore. Penn State, Ohio State, and obviously Alabama. So it's okay. They played one more game against the same opponent they played before. Arizona was still just getting its bearings. If you want to look at what Arizona had done before that, they lost to an unranked Mississippi State team. They lost to Washington, then they lost to Southern Cal, and then they won out. Obviously, we are big Jed Fish fans over here, but to act like that's like a murderer's row facing them when no one expected them to kind of be what they ended up being is one thing altogether. So anyhow, let's get back to some of the quotes because that's just insane to me. Let's get out of the Washington of it all. We don't feel like we need to read those too much. It's the one Michigan, and subscribe to The Athletic. You know, you can read some of this stuff here. I'm going to try some of my tea. It's probably scorching hot. It is. Burnt my tongue a little bit. One assistant says Michigan should just run it down their throats and keep Penix off the field. Accurate. I agree. This is a head coach, says, I don't think there are many teams in football that are patient enough running the football, but Michigan is. They keep proving that. They keep running it on you. No one else in the Pac-12 will do that other than maybe Oregon State. If Texas would have Monday night, they probably would have been better off. They were ripping off runs on them. Accurate. You can run the ball on Washington. Texas could. If their backs didn't fumble, they probably win the game. Accurate. Another head coach. Michigan wants to run the ball and get downhill on you. They got to run the ball against Washington and keep Penix off the field. Michigan's defense is really good, and their secondary is better than Washington's, but their offense is going to be their best defense. So a lot of this is actually pretty accurate. It's just like the early stuff that really was irksome, you know? Now this one's really bizarre. This one is absolutely bizarre. This one's not the one I was thinking of, but we'll read this one nonetheless. JJ hadn't played that well in a long time, but he played really well against Alabama. I was more scared about him on the move than in the pocket. We tried to keep him in the pocket. He's very fast and he throws really well in the run. It's from a head coach who played Michigan. He can make all of these accurate throws from different arm angles. He's better going to his right, but can still hurt you going to his left. He is deadly to his right. Now, here's the one that I was going to say, which is really bizarre here. This is an assistant coach. He said, they have explosive playmakers, but chunk plays? J.J. McCarthy ain't that guy. I don't know what Harbaugh is talking about. He's out of his mind. If you're freaking Kyle Shanahan, you might like him. But in college football, I don't know if he's going to get the job done. Dude has lost one game as a starter. One. Also, hurt in the biggest games of the year. Chunk plays, okay, maybe not so much this year. That hasn't happened a ton except for the tight ends this year, and a couple outside of that, a couple to Roman, a couple to Cornelius Johnson, and a couple to Samaj Morgan. Obviously, you had the catch and run by Tyler Morrison this last game, but I mean, we know that he can make them because we've seen him do it. Okay, it's really weird. About multiple coaches talked with The Athletic about Washington's defensive scheme. Listen, Washington's the worst defense that they're going to be facing, okay? Not the worst overall. We'll get to those in a second, but they said of Washington's scheme against Michigan, they put everybody up in the line and make the quarterback think a little bit. Then he'll drop everybody into coverage, and you don't know if he's playing zone or man. He can get creative with disguising. This is someone who faced Washington. He makes it look like zero pressure where you have a lot of conversions as a staff and how you're going to handle it. He may bluff and drop out. He's making it look like cover zero, but it was cover three, and he'd shoot guys out. Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter. But overall, they think Washington is going to win. Michigan has just 19 plays of longer than 30 yards this season, which ranks 112th nationally. Guess what? That's by design. Michigan just likes. It's funny because it's like, oh, they can't hit chunk plays, and then at the same breath, they're like, what Michigan needs to do in this game is not hit chunk plays and just control the time of possession. Okay, well, which one is it? Do you know football coaches? I got a text from someone inside the Michigan program today that was laughing at this article and said, this just sounds like a bunch of fanboys who, for their own team that hate on Michigan and are just airing their grievances. It's unreal. Anyway, let's, I don't know if I want to continue on I'm not going to continue on this track. I don't know if I want to go to the Gregg Doyel thing, but it is ridiculous. So we're going to kind of touch on it here. We're going to do that here in a moment. But before we do, the NFL regular season is wrapping up, and there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets. And that's win or lose. Doesn't bet on your hapless team, whatever it may be. I don't know enough about the NFL. Carolina? Yeah, Carolina's bad, right? Okay, bet on Carolina. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets. The app, super easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet. Live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub and find the best popular parlays, heck of a lot more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup, just a full-on layup, and then you can continue to make either good bets or bad bets because you got $150 to play with. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. If you're watching rather than listening, I'm wearing a little eye candy today, and I wore some yesterday with my black Rose Bowl hat, but this white one that I paid an exorbitant, obscene amount for at the Rose Bowl Bash because they said that they were available, and Luke DeMello who stays with me for these games, was kind enough to go an advanced scout. I didn't send him; he was going there anyway, and he sent me a picture. And then Brandon Brown came into the media hospitality wearing one, and I'm like, I'm about to take the media shuttle up there. I can't believe I'm doing this. So I go up there and I buy this hat, and it's the coolest hat that I own. As far as like design, don't get me wrong. You're going to be seeing a lot of my Jesus is King and Jesus Saves and the Crown of Thorns with the 3 nails hats that I have. But I mean, this is like, I'm being a fanboy about everything. Well, it's basically what I'm telling you here. But it's time to be a fanboy of the national championship game. Nonetheless, interesting stuff from Gregg Doyel. I couldn't read it because I was my best friend sent this to me from he sent it to me from MGO blog. It was just easier for him to share. But there was an IndyStar article that was just absolutely ridiculous by Gregg Doyel. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Couldn't pull it up on my phone. It was paywalled. He was like, I read it just fine. Nope, still paywalled. But there is a snippet here. So the article is titled something just absolutely absurd, and I just closed the the screen I needed. History. Let's see here. All right. My apologies for my ridiculousness here. National title for Harbaugh's cheating would render college football meaningless. Is what the title is here. Or actually, it's Jim Harbaugh cheated twice to help Michigan reach national title game. Understand this, Doyle says. We could be days away from Harbaugh hoisting a national championship trophy to cap a season in which he was suspended twice for cheating. The first 3 games of the regular season and the last 3 because 2 different scandals that helped the 2023 Michigan Wolverines achieve greatness. I'm sorry, do you think that he bought a cheeseburger and said, I don't recall about a recruit, that helped him achieve greatness? I can understand the people who think the Connor Stallion stuff is wild, okay? It's a wild story, and there's a lot of people who think that Jim Harbaugh had full knowledge of it, and even though the NCAA has found no such evidence, they stick to it, right? The narrative has been set. Anyway, when that time comes, Doyle says, if that time comes, college football will be thrown into the blazing furnace. And this is what I don't like, because now he's starting to he's using biblical stuff for, like, I understand, like, using different biblical stuff to it just ends up being sacrilegious here, in my opinion. Where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, to borrow from a book Harbaugh likes to thump. That's from the New Testament, Matthew 13:42. Okay, but you're taking it literally out of context, because the weeping and gnashing of teeth is in reference to hell. Okay, college football is not going to hell because of Harbaugh's cheating. He continues, perhaps it's right and good that Jim Harbaugh will be remembered as one of the horsemen of this apocalypse, because if Michigan wins the national championship in a season it was popped twice for cheating violations that helped this very team, college football will become something like the Book of Ecclesiastes. Meaningless. The Book of Ecclesiastes is not meaningless. So the Book of Ecclesiastes has a lot of wisdom and knowledge in it. And I understand Ecclesiastes is an odd book. It's a lot of Solomon saying things like, go and have fun, right? You know, eat good food, drink good wine, and a lot of kind of lamentations from Solomon. That doesn't mean it's meaningless. So I push back strongly on that. But I don't know what Gregg Doyel thinks that Jim Harbaugh did or what Michigan did, right? It just, to me, is one of those things where he just wants to sound like, I am just so, it's like, it's virtue signaling is what it is, right? It's 100% what it is. He's virtue signaling. Look at how pious I am, and I'm quoting the Bible back at Jim Harbaugh, and because I am going to try to make myself sound so holier than thou. Well, just because you've heard the Metallica song, Holier Than Thou, does not make you holier than thou, Greg. Burn my tongue again on some tea. It's absolutely hilarious that there's anyone that's still in this camp, considering I've talked to quite a few national reporters. Some are still like kind of in the camp, but they're like, it doesn't really matter, right? Mike Farrell tweeted at me one of his stories, ostensibly because he wanted me to retweet it. And he was like, listen, after everything Michigan's gone through and everything Michigan's overcome, I do not care about any of this sign stealing stuff. Michigan was severely punished by not having Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines for the three biggest games of the end of the regular season. Easily, all three, the hardest games of the regular season. You can say what you want about Maryland. Given all of the adversity Michigan was under in general, no Harbaugh, Chris Partridge fired on the eve of, an embattled player who I won't name. Michigan overcame that. An injured J.J. McCarthy, way more injured than anyone knows. Severely injured, like we're talking, did not practice that week. Injured. Overcame it. Michigan beat Ohio State. If you would have said before the season, okay, Michigan's going to play Ohio State, but no Jim Harbaugh, still relatively banged up J.J. McCarthy, you'd be like, well, dang, probably not going to work out. So, and then we have the same thing with the first three games, Cheeseburger Gate. For maybe, for either or, did the time without necessarily doing the crime. Okay? So, I don't understand this, this complete, like, holier than thou stance that some are still having. But I will tell you, most of the national media now, over it. Absolutely over it. Michigan going and playing against Alabama. Listen, it's not like what the SEC has done for years in actual cheating to get recruits. There is no bigger way to cheat in the sport than to get recruits by skirting the rules. And everyone just batted their eyes at that. And they're like, oh, SEC, you're so adorable. Never change. But a gray area is exposed in sign stealing, which is legal. The gray area, again. And yet, this is the biggest scandal in all of sports ever. Unbelievable. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thinking about my schedule, it does not look like I'm going to get a podcast out early. Everything goes well. I arrive on time. I will do one tomorrow night, probably late again, in Houston. That is going to be the goal. I wish unfortunately have to check some of my equipment, like my monopod and stuff like that I use. Otherwise, I would do the podcast during my layover in Atlanta. But I don't think that there's an easy way to do that. But if there is, maybe we'll get one out earlier. We'll see. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.